Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Digital Dialogue. My name is 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝘁, and I am your host today. I am a fellow at the Institute for Digital Transformation, who is sponsoring this event. I'm also a Chief Experience Officer and a former IT exec. But this isn't about me today. This is about you, and it's about two really heavy topics that we're hoping we can give you some new insights and ideas about. We're going to dig into AI, and I know everyone's talking about AI, but we're going to come at this from a perspective of the CIO and find out what they're really thinking and doing about it. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about more of a global, more broad perspective, particularly around how the economy and global marketplace is just full of disruption right now. I think we could think back to COVID. It feels like it's just been a bit unpredictable for the past couple of years. And so we're going to look at that as well. I have an incredible panel of CIOs and executives who are going to help us walk through all of this. So let us get them on here. First, I'd like to bring on 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝘁.
Hi, Des. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss these topics. I'm really excited for it. So my career has been a blend of management consulting and technology leadership. And so I've worked on all sides of IT, from strategic problem solving to tech implementation. So I'm really excited to talk about this. I've got some perspectives on frameworks I've created on business-led tech-enabled transformation. And so super excited to share that and learn from all of you today.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for being here. Let's also bring on 𝗗𝗂𝗲𝗂𝗶𝘁.
Thank you, Jessica. And good morning, everyone. My name is 𝗗𝗂𝗲𝗂𝗶𝘁. I'm a transformational IT executive. Work globally in the consumer packaged goods, predominantly with a lot of focus on adult beverages. 3 different stops in the adult beverage world there. I've also led IT organizations in semiconductor, chemical manufacturing environments as well. My focus has always been on supply chain manufacturing systems, and we will have a lot of applications as we go through the AI discussion there as well. And as an IT exec, data analytics, AI are big points of focus. I've completed a lot of different rotations and key aspects of IT strategy, post-merger integration, data analytics, AI, ERP, and CRM discovery, and those types of things. So I really look forward to this interactive discussion this morning, and I'll turn it back over to Jessica.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And now let's bring on 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁𝗃.
It's great to be with you. Delighted to be part of the panel. I spent the last 35 years in corporate America as an IT executive. The last 15 years of my career, I was a CIO at the United States Tennis Association. Those of you who know us probably know us as the folks who run the US Open Tennis Tournament, which is the most highly attended annual sporting event in the world. Prior to that, I spent the decade at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, where among other roles, I ran global shared services and global IT planning. For the last 9 years, I've been making a living by making a difference, by serving as an executive coach to more than 400 IT executives and facilitating leadership workshops for more than 7,500 IT leaders. Delighted to be a part of this conversation today.
Awesome. Awesome. We also have Kathy Lilly, who, of course, at the minute we were going live, her office has a fire alarm going there. So I think we're going to bring her back on in a little bit. Hopefully the noise will stop and we can get her voice on here. Just a little bit of housekeeping to the audience. So we do want to get you involved in this conversation. Please use the chat, put your questions, your thoughts in there, and we will try to get to them. Full disclosure, I'm terrible at that. So I'm gonna ask my colleagues here on the panel to make sure I don't miss anything, and we get your voices on here as well. So we have a lot of good stuff to dig into. Again, we were looking at this from the perspective of not just talking theory, but we want to talk about what are CIOs really doing with AI, and what are CIOs really doing about a volatile, unpredictable marketplace. So lots of examples. Very much want to make sure that this audience walks away with some good pieces of advice. So that is our goal. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Graham, I'm going to hit you up first. When we talk about AI and we are thinking about AI, all I hear about from my colleagues is mostly about savings, cost savings, labor savings, that sort of thing. And I know that that is a foundational element of it. We're going to dig also on the engagement part of that here as well, hopefully. We have some good things to say about that. But Graham, set us up and sort of give us some foundation on what are CIOs really, what applications are they really focused on? What are they doing? Forget the hype. What's really happening?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. And it come out the gates fast there. I love it. So I was doing a bit of prep for our conversation, and I came across a really interesting report from one of the strategy consultants, which was saying that 92% of companies are reporting that they're investing in AI, and the market's around, I think it was $200 billion last year, but only 1% are reporting actually getting any value from that, which is super interesting, and I think highlights the challenge behind your question. So from my experience, I've seen sort of three groupings, if you like, about where AI, is adding some value. The first, I also, like Ed, have a background in consumer goods. So I think you see this in consumer goods, but I think you see it elsewhere is the hyper personalization. So the whole kind of Netflix thing of knowing what show I'm going to enjoy next before I even know that. And I think I'm seeing over the companies I've worked at and conversations I've had is really tailoring that experience to drive consumer loyalty and hopefully increase sales as well. So hyper personalization first. I think the second is decision intelligence. So really using real time or near real time data to drive improved decision making. So I've been involved in things like forecast accuracy, which allows you to lower inventory, which improves working capital, whilst ensuring customer service levels, and avoiding stock outs and overstocks and things in customer environments. And that is real value. That's not just sort of cost avoidance on your question. There's real value there from doing it. And I think the third one I would say is human augmentation. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering out there, but I don't personally see AI as a replacement. I see it as an empowerment to our jobs. And just to go on with my stats, there's an interesting Gartner number out there that says by 2028, 15% of our decisions will be AI driven for all of us. That's 15% of enterprise decisions will be informed in some way by AI. And the other one, which is fascinating, is by 2030, 1 in 20 of us will oversee robots instead of humans. So I think it's about collaboration, not competition with AI. And it's about us changing how we, maybe how we manage and how we've got used to leading teams. Because if I'm going to lead robots in the future, I'm going to have to learn that skill. I don't know that I know it. So that's the three values that I've seen for AI.
Sorry, that was me being exactly what John said. Don't mute yourself because everyone forgets. And I was just curious if you could, give us your perspective on what applications you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely, Jessica. And to build on what Graham said, we're past that AI will change everything someday thing. Now it's being selectively applied to very specific areas. In the consumer packaged goods space, it's less about the flashing generative demos and those types of things, but it's real applications. It's using AI in the value chain to improve efficiency, decision making, as Graham said, customer responsiveness and things like that. What I'm seeing, specifically in the supply chain world, it's probably the most mature that I've seen, where you're actually starting to deliver some ROI, demand forecasting, inventory management, logistics, things like that. Advanced machine learning models where we're improving forecast accuracy, reducing both stockouts, overstock, and those types of things. You're really starting to see some real applications there. And then, building on what Graham said, the marketing consumer insights, lots of data out there, lots of third-party data, and you're seeing a lot of leveraging of that data to really, take that social listening, if you will, the loyalty programs, point of sale systems, really drive that personalized marketing, and add that value for better product development, those types of things. And there's plenty more examples in the consumer world, in product development and those types of things. But there's a lot of different pilots going on that I'm seeing, and like I said, a lot of ROI. And again, it's the bottom line is we're past the hype. this bit of it. It's not no longer that experimental the playground. It's embedded in how we run our businesses. It's bringing value. It's adding ROI. So it's really interesting to see it really take shape.
Yeah, and I was really interested in hearing, like, what is the real ROI? Are we there yet? Is it coming to fruition? And both you and Graham have sort of alluded to the fact that, yeah, it really is kind of proving itself to be a value. Great. Let's bring Kathy on. I think the alarms have stopped, Kathy. So why don't you do a little introduction, and then I've got some questions for you.
Sure. Jessica, thank you for having me. I am Kathy Lilly, and I'm the CIO for 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗶𝗂𝗶 Business Solutions. At 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗶𝗂𝗶 Business Solutions, in the IT space, we focus on business outcomes, and we focus on building platforms that are both simple, modern, and effective. So this ROI conversation is very near and dear to what it is we're trying to deliver and how we focus on the outcome and the benefit to our business.
Great, thank you for that. So I wanted to ask you to sort of bring the human engagement conversation into the AI discussion. Cost savings, and the guys have just given us some great examples of where, from a processing perspective, AI has been useful and valuable. Are you seeing the employee experience and the customer experience affected in a positive way with AI? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is going to bring a lot of value to both of those areas. From an employee point of view, today, to get questions answered requires them to email or call someone. In the future, when you look at an AI agent, what it's going to be able to do is search the LLM model to be able to give them those answers without having to add friction into the process, without delays in terms of waiting for someone to call them back or email them back. So that should be both the employee side as well as the customer side. We have seen from some of our sales enablement deployments, we have seen information that tells us, as we went through the experience design, that they are spending a lot of time in non-sales activity. In order to close that gap, we have the ability now to deliver data directly to them. And most importantly, as we add the AI agents on top of that, they are going to be able to move much faster in terms of being able to focus on selling.
Awesome. Very important. Very important. You and I have talked quite a bit about data in general and some of the things that you're doing with it. And clearly the data element in this equation is extremely important to making AI good, usable, valuable, correct.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit what your approach is to getting your organization to a place where you've got good, clean data.
So, maybe it was lucky, but we started down a journey about 2.5 years ago to really focus on our data and analytics space and to become a data-driven organization. That resulted in us building out a data lake, but that data lake has been built out based on business requirements. So as the business asked us to solve a problem, we would bring the data into the data lake to help solve that situation. The value that we have now is that data lake is now feeding our core platforms that people will be operating out of. We talked a little bit earlier about personalization at the customer side. We also need to personalize and have persona-based solutions internally as well. And that starts to say, where are you going to live? That's where we're going to deliver the data out of the data lake into that platform. And the result of that is, as we've taken this through the paces, we have been able to prove out that that data is accurate, that that data can serve as a single source of truth. And that data now becomes the engine that will help drive the AI capability within those platforms.
Graham or Ed, anything else you'd want to add on the data side of it?
I
Yeah,
think
Jeff,
I would say,
after you, Graham.
I think I really like what Kathy was explaining there about the data example and the data lake, because I think all too often we can forget why we're doing technology. So I like to attach any technology related investment or decision to what I've called OKRs, objectives and key results. It's like your North Star of why you're doing something. And clearly, as Kathy was talking about there, they didn't just bring data to the data lake because they could, but there was obviously a strategic intent as to why, and you can get some intrinsic value from that, and then that builds up into something greater. And so I really like that. I think my ad would be not technology for the sake of technology. We had one recently where we implemented a predictive maintenance solution, and again, it's one of those buzzwords that you talked about at the beginning, Jess, that you like to think, oh, I'm doing predictive, I'm doing forecasting, I'm doing something with my data, and so therefore that makes it meaningful. But by using that OKR concept, we were able to show that we had 15% less downtime, and again, that's real money saved. Like Ed was talking about, it's productivity, it's OEE, or whatever your metric is that you're using, and that translates to dollars. And I think it's super important to always have that front of mind as to why you're doing your technology, or why you're using the data or the data lake the way you're using it.
Great. So let's, Larry, let's get you on here. Now you obviously former CIO, now you're coaching leaders to be the wonderful CIO that you were. How are you preparing your clients to get themselves in a position where it's easy for them to adapt to new technologies, like AI comes on and becomes such a big, important piece of the technology stack? How are you helping them, figure out how do you get good at something even when you don't know what that something's going to be?
Well, I think that's really important. I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey, and one of his principles is starting with the end in mind. We really need to understand, what are we trying to accomplish? Far too often in the past, we've seen a new competency or a new technology or new capability come across as a panacea to solve all ills, and they never are. And we've implemented solutions in search of problems, quite frankly. So I think we need to be very crystal clear on what is the use case, what specifically are we trying to accomplish, what impact are you trying to achieve? How can you measure that impact? What's the return on investment, and how do you measure that return on investment? So many times we have the airplane magazine syndrome, where somebody sees something and think it's cool and exciting, and they want to do something with it. We need to be able to, in a constructive way, not dissuade them from their enthusiasm, but be enthusiastic about it, understand, how do you see this implemented? How do you see this having an impact in the business? Otherwise, as the Cheshire Cat said in Alice in Wonderland, you don't know where you go, maybe you go to think.
And then, kind of a budding question to this is, getting the right talent in an organization. So now with AI being so important to us, how do we manage, the talent pool? Is there a shortage? How do we get that solved?
Whatever new technology or capability comes around, there's a feeding frenzy, and it creates a buying binge, and there's always a shortage. I can remember when anyone who could, write the words data scientist into their resume would get an interview based upon some kind of a search engine search. Any new technology, any new capability has an extremely limited number of true SMEs because it hasn't been around that long. So you're going to have to pay handsomely for the limited number of people you can find, if you can't find them at all. So I'm a big believer in a better approach being, maybe find people with expertise in adjacent technologies or capabilities who've got an agile mindset that requires a similar side approach to it, and teach them the skills to develop your own subject matter experts in your own organization. So take people you already know, people you trust, people who've got the right culture, the right fit in the organization, who know the business, and teach them the things they don't know about it. So you can augment that with expertise, but you think you can go out and find an expert. First of all, there aren't that many of them out there. And second of all, you're going to pay handsomely if you can.
Well, I love that because, finding an agile mindset. I mean, technology is designed to change, and I think that's one of the reasons we all love being in this business, because it changes so much. And, you have to be able to adapt yourself to new things that you've never seen or heard of before and become really great, or at least adept enough to make the right decisions, right? I think that's super important. And that's an inner quality that a person needs to have. So here's a question I'm gonna put this to all of you guys. This is more just a fun one for me. I'm curious, as you're looking out in the future of where AI is going, what are you each most excited about? Is there one thing that's kind of like, I really can't wait to get to this place or see this?
I'm happy to start. I think what I'm excited about is our ability to move faster. I think that's what AI is going to provide us. You know, we continually talk in the IT space about being agile, moving faster, delivering more quickly. And I think AI is certainly going to be a technology that's going to enable us to deliver those business solutions in a faster pace.
Yeah, and Jessica, I'll build on what Kathy said. It's, agile, moving faster. It's really having that tangible ROI, being able to move the needle, right? To make a difference in the business from a productivity standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, and those types of things is taking that application of AI and being able to make a difference where things are working faster, making a big difference, and the business is seeing the value.
Well, that's such a great statement. Make a difference, because I don't know about you guys, but I came into this business because I wanted to make a difference. And we each probably feel that way, right? In different ways. And I think just seeing the actual end result, for me, without that, it's just so unsatisfying. So I think that's really great, Ed. Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, Jason. I think all of us and everyone listening will say they came into this to try and make a difference. And so on your question, the thing that makes me most excited for AI, I think it's that human augmentation. I think it's the removal of the mundane tasks that we shouldn't be afraid of. We should embrace, because we all have boring parts to our job. We all always will have less interesting parts to our job. The more of that you can remove, and the more you can challenge yourself for the next thing, or improve your decision insights, or improve the data I have available to me to make more informed decisions, allows all of us to do more. And so I think that vision I really like what my fellow panelists said, and you, Jess, like that, given that we all came into this to make a difference, I think AI really is a tool that can help us do that if we use it in the right way and if we embrace it.
Right. Larry, what about you?
Maybe I'm old school, but one of the things I'm excited to see is the validation of my premise that the more things change, the more they stay the same, and that regardless of the new capability, you're still going to require outstanding leadership, outstanding focus, and creating a culture where people can thrive. So I think that it's really important that we don't lose focus on those things, and that we create organizations where we have a culture of leadership, where no matter what the new capability is, we feed it into a group of people that know how to get the best results by working with people and through people, instead of thinking that this is going to solve all of our problems because it's a new capability.
I love that. So I'm going to take a turn with you guys right now. Let's put AI over to the side for a minute. And I want to think a little bit more broadly, think a little bit more globally about our marketplace today, our economy across the globe, our supply chain. We want to talk about that a little bit, and disruption. So it's really, I guess my questions in this whole next sort of topic are really centered around, look, we have a lot of disruption. Again, going back to COVID, I think that was a really kind of mark in the sand of this is what real disruption feels like. I think we're seeing it in various ways today for other reasons. And I think it's normal, actually, to see great change. So let's kind of dig on that a little bit. Kathy, I want to go to you first and ask you, how are you, how has the CIO role changed, or your expectations as a CIO, or those expectations of your peers have changed related to your role in a time of great disruption?
So we have one of our executives who makes this statement: the change you're living through right today is the slowest you're ever going to see the pace of change. And it is something that I keep in my mind. And I think he's he's absolutely correct. So what we have to do is anticipate the change and know it's coming. And there's multiple things, some of it is, back to Larry's point, some of this is business as usual for IT. We need to continue to do the things that we've done well, but we need to do it at a faster pace. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by thinking about how are we delivering those business outcomes to our business, and turn in on ourselves and say, how do we do that ourselves? How do we figure out how to work more agile within the IT organization? What tools can we implement to make and automate to make us and help us move faster, be much more clear, much more focused? That leadership comment is very, very accurate. And the place where we go off the rails is when we lose focus, when we get confused and you have too many people with their hands in the pie, and nobody really understands what it is we're trying to accomplish. So I think building an IT organization that can adjust to these changes means we have to invest in the IT organization. And nobody can use their own set of tools any longer. We need to be on the same tools. We need to really think through the automation of our tasks we don't need to be doing. So as we do that, we're just going to get better and smarter and be able to grow ourselves and be able to deliver even better business solutions.
Even bringing back the concept of AI into that to help with some of those commodity tasks. Graham, I know that you have some expertise in supply chain, and this is a question that, I think this is something that would be important to lots of people listening to this discussion. With supply chain potentially having some danger of being disrupted, we certainly saw it in COVID, and it's possible that happens again. It's sort of happening. We've seen some of that happen a little bit this year as well. How are you recommending to other leaders how to balance risk mitigation of that, but also not lose the innovation side of the equation? How do you manage both?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I'm sure Ed, with his experience, will chime in here as well. So I think, like we said earlier, I think supply chain disruptions have always been there before us and our predecessors. We're always managing supply chain issues. I think they're maybe more prevalent, more newsworthy these days with some big events that have happened. And I think it will continue. And I think that balance, to me, it sort of implies there's a perfect point for the pendulum to rest on. And I don't think there is. I think it's a continual refinement, because if I just mitigate risk, I do nothing. If I over innovate, I'm busy being busy playing with stuff. But I think I've heard from all the panelists, that's sort of pointless. You've got to bring it back, like I think all of them said, actually, you've got to bring it back to value and purpose and the reason why. And so for me, I building a little bit on what Kathy was saying, I think there's a big opportunity in supply chains to embrace technology. I think supply chains are, and I think that trend will increase because, with recent changes in the supply chain, what you don't want to do is go and reconfigure your entire supply chain because some event has happened. That's not practically possible. It's not affordable. It's not something that's going to yield a result this given year. And so I think it's about embracing technology, like Kathy said. I think I'm trying to move organizations to more plug and play type technologies. So like a Lego block type model that you can replace the brick if something has gone wrong or something better comes along, because we all know the pace of change of technology. So I think a modular based system is the way to go for technology, and then tying it like we've talked about before to the value and the OKR and the KPI that the supply chain's measuring as to why you're doing that technology. And I think on the innovation side, I think part of it is not fearing failure, because risk mitigation sometimes means, okay, I can't fail. But I don't think that's right. I think there's countless examples that everyone will have. I have one on a forecasting model where we completely failed, but we didn't walk away from it because we knew there was inherent value in having that predictive model. And in the end, when we came around and we were able to deliver something, we saw like an 8% improvement over what we thought we were going to get. And so it just shows the value of sort of staying the course, not being afraid to fail, learning when you do fail. And I think if as CIOs and technologists, if we can build modular big systems that allow us to try something, fail, repeat, but switch out little components, it stops you having this big, large technology debt that stops you doing anything, because in the end, fear of failure and doing nothing is also a risk and a problem that faces supply chains and technologies today.
Yeah. Ed, anything you would want to add to that one?
Yeah, very difficult to follow what both Graham and Kathy said. Very valid, but when you're looking at the unpredictable marketing conditions, it's having that blend of clarity, adaptability, and purpose. As Graham said, don't stop, right? So learn from your mistakes, be okay to fail. What I've really done is anchor with the business mission. It's not just the technology. Tie your work to the business function, the business outcome, and really trying to reinforce IT as that value creator. And in times of uncertainty, and when you're looking at unpredictability in supply chain, as we're talking about, is having both short-term and long-term goals. Really focus on some short-term goals with a very clear line of sight. What can the team deliver quickly to the business, and how can you celebrate those? And in times of uncertainty and downturns and things like that, keep building and developing your people, whether it's IT or business people. Keep the focus on where that value is, where that proof of value is. Continue with pilots and KPIs and things like that to really tease out and continue that AI focus in supply chain. And then really, again, going back to the partnership with the business, it's really keeping the business as a strategic partner, making sure IT is a strategic partner, and just continue to push that. Marketing turbulence can demoralize people or can galvanize. It goes back to the leadership. So again, making sure you've got a clear purpose, short-term wins, continued growth is really what matters.
Jessica, can I just jump on one point Ed made there that I think is super important, and we shouldn't overlook, which is talent. I think we all hear data is the new gold, and I think Kathy gave a really good example about where they had managed to deliver something. But what Ed said there about talent, I think, is super important, because we all know people are at the core of what we do. I think there's never been greater demand and competition for our talent pools. All the tech firms out there, all the startups, they're offering some super interesting and exciting work. They're offering, convenient work situations and presumably good paychecks and things to go with it. So I think that competition has never been greater. And so I think it's really important to invest in our people, our talents, train, retain those people, because you can't have too high turnover, because in the end it's those, whether they're supply chain folks or IT folks or data science folks, they're the ones that are going to deliver the results. And so I think that point from Ed in a broader, powerful speech was a really important one.
And Graham, just again, building on what you said too, it's not just the IT talent too, it's the business talent.
Yeah.
And making sure they're aligned and they're aware of what the strategies are and what AI can do for them, and make sure they're involved in workshops and pilots and proof of concepts and those types of things. It's across the board.
Yeah,
As
for sure.
I was saying this to a colleague of mine a couple of weeks ago. You really got to bring people along for the ride. I say this all the time. You've got to bring people along for the ride. She was asking me, well, how do you get people to buy into the directions that you're trying to take them? They gotta take them with you, and that means constant communication. It means clarity of purpose, which I think you guys discussed that already, but that's all a part of it. And in my mind, AI has a lot of the characteristics of how things felt when we started talking about digital transformation, and then we can go back to cloud, and then we can go back to mobile phones in the work. I mean, we sort of have this conversation over and over again. Larry, I think you were saying that as well. But it really comes back to making sure that the organization understands the value of these programs and what it's going to do for the business, and therefore how it's going to be valuable to them too, and have them be a part of it, as opposed to just sort of the command and control. It's got to be more of a, hey, we're a collaborative team, right? We're really going to take this turn into this new technology, and here's why you're important as a part of that, right? I mean, I think that's the
I always say,
If I
please, Kathy.
I was just going to add on to that because there was something else Ed and Graham hit on as well. And some of that was this need to create for the CIOs to create these business partner relationships. And I am a firm believer that we should be spending more time with our business than we do with our own internal teams, because that's where we can understand how together we can build out those outcomes. And then the talent across the organization, we have those joint conversations.
Larry, you were going to say?
Jessica, to the point you were making, we need to pivot from conversations that are around you and me to conversations about us and we. You know, success is a team sport. If we engage people in the process and communicate with them effectively, I think that we'll have much better outcomes than if we're just talking at them.
Great, I agree. So Larry, well, I've got you sort of speaking here. Let's talk to a little bit about some of the qualities that you see as the most critical for leaders coming into this position. And so it kind of goes along with what Kathy is saying. She's saying, you know, the CIO needs to be partnered with all of their peers and the organization. What skill or quality, or how would you define to someone, you know, trying to figure out how do I do that, and how do I become that kind of a leader? How do you just
a couple of aspects of it? I mean, first of all, one of the most important skill sets is effective communication. And there's two parts of that. When we're speaking with people, all right, making sure that we're transparent, we're honest, and we're building trust. You know, I talk about tell people as much as you can, as soon as you can, as often as you can. You know, people don't like to be like mushrooms. Mushrooms are raised in the dark with manure piling. You know, if we keep people that way, it's not going to go very well for us. The second part of communication, quite frankly, is listening. And that's the part where most of us are not particularly good. We need to understand where people are coming from, help them figure out what they want to do, where they want to go, and figure out how to get there. Now, part of that is understanding my favorite acronym. By the way, as a former CIO, I hate acronyms because they geek speak way too much, right? But the one acronym I am a big fan of is WIFT. What's in it for them? Because I truly think that if we understand where people are coming from, what's in it for them, we have a much better chance of motivating people to get things accomplished. You know, the biggest mistake we make is I try to get you excited about my agenda. And at best, no matter how effective I am, I've got a 50-50 shot. But if I could truly understand what you're trying to accomplish, what your agenda is, and I could show you points of synchronization between what you're trying to accomplish, and by doing the things I'm asking you to do, how you can accomplish your agenda, we have a much higher probability of success. And then to me, finally, this is all wrapped into the banner of emotional intelligence. You've got to have a level of self-awareness to how you're coming across to people, how they're perceiving what you're saying, and how they understand what you're saying, and understand where they're coming from, so that you can really adapt to their needs and to meet their needs. You know, there's an old adage that says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that goes a long way towards being effective as a leader in this day and age.
Well, I think it's kind of intriguing to me that we're having this conversation today about AI and, you know, disruption. And it comes at the end, it comes all back to you've got to really be great leaders. And you've really got to, I would say, care about the people in your organization. And I forget which one of you said this, but one of you did say, meet them where they are. You've got to meet them where they are. And that requires leadership to invest in just thinking about that. And, you know, one could say, oh, this is, you know, another fluffy, you know, soft skill conversation, but it doesn't work. It doesn't succeed. And it being whatever initiative you are trying to put out there, no matter the size, if you don't have everyone sort of clued in and keep that communication going. So we keep coming back to trust, right? Empathy, these words that everyone's talking about it, but I don't think it's just words. I think these are really important qualities that we've got to make sure we intentionally are focusing on those qualities in our behavior, in our leaders' behavior, in people that work for us. It's all important. Any last thoughts on that before I take us to our next little fun game? Okay.
Sorry, Jess, I'd maybe add one, the empathy point I completely agree with. I really buy into the concept of servant leadership, putting your teams and your frontline colleagues, at the top of the pyramid, and how can I help you do your job better, because that helps everyone. And the other one that I think we've touched on here that I would call out is adaptability. And I have a team member who once said to me, Graham, I always have the right answer. And which intrigued me, right? And then he said, because when I realize I'm wrong, I adopt that mindset, that insight that I got. And it really stuck with me, because I think that level of humility and that willingness to adapt and learn and pivot and enhance is a really powerful quality. So I would add, that sort of adaptability piece as well as the empathy.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm going to take us to our speed round, which is the last piece of advice we're going to give to our audience. So as I promised in the beginning, I want to make sure everyone walks out of this conversation with something new to think about that's helpful, and give you guys a minute to each kind of throw out to the audience, what's your best piece of advice, whether it's related to approaching AI, the economy, the global marketplace, etc., or even servant leadership, as we were just talking about. So you guys choose, but what's your best piece of advice? Larry, I'm putting you up first.
We're living in interesting times, as the old Chinese proverb said, and there's so many things that seem outside of our control. So to me, it's imperative that we focus on the things we can control. Our effort, building a high-performing culture, effective communication, working with people to prioritize what really matters, developing our employees, providing clear and consistent direction, and excellent servant leadership. Tough times never last, tough people do. And if we focus on the things we can control, we will be able to influence and impact the things that seem outside of us.
Awesome. Kathy?
So for me, I think that I would highly encourage us as IT leaders to not only deliver the technology, but to think about it through the lens of experience design. What is it that we are building and how will people use it? And then overlay all of that with change management. And I know that, I've seen projects, our own projects done both ways, and there is great reward to the people who will use this system, as well as for everybody participating, if you implement both experience design as well as change management, because people get wowed and they really feel like you've helped them, and there is where the reward comes in.
Very nice. Ed, what you got?
In these uncertain times, you need to build for agility, not just the efficiency. Break down those big initiatives and challenge every project. Can we adapt this in X amount of time? Even if conditions change. So really stay focused on that agility. Ruthlessly prioritize what's ROI driven, and don't be afraid to kill the ones that are not, or pause the ones that are not. Make those hard decisions. We talked about the people bit of it, right? It's continuous upskilling and cross-skilling your IT team, your business team, and those types of things. And then really just, create a culture of that transparency and purpose. Lead with that empathy, that connection to the mission, the alignment with the business, and continue to reinforce that. You can't predict what's coming, but you can be ready for it. So it's the organizations that can be agile, act faster, invest in the people and the platforms, and stay very laser focused on where that customer value is, what's going to move the needle, as I said before, and really just lead with that sense of purpose, that resilience.
Awesome. Graham, you want to finish this?
I was going to say OKRs, but Larry said he hates acronyms. So I'll either spell it out or come up with something new. But in all seriousness, I think building on what Ed was saying there, I think objectives and key results. So tying what you're doing to a specific purpose that is measurable with some KPIs, I think is super important. Using things like capability models, business capability models, to know how am I going to measure any change I can deliver with technology to see if it's successful or not. And it's okay for it not to be successful, because you still learn and then you'll try again. So I would really encourage anyone listening who isn't familiar with that to research the topic, because I think it's a very powerful way of tying technology to business objectives and being able to measure the value of doing it.
And I think I'm going to add onto that, Graham. I think taking that story, if you will, and actually sharing that story across the business and in language that makes sense to the business, right? But having that conversation of, this is what we said we were going to do. This is what the numbers are showing us where the value is. We want you to kind of be a part of that conversation. And, you may get feedback that you're not expecting from that story, but I think that that's an important loop too.
Yeah, because if I could add, Jess, a point on that, I think you raise a really nice point, because often when you speak to a data scientist, they'll talk about success being model accuracy and the degree of variability, which means nothing to a supply chain person. What they care about is, what was my on-time in full customer service level? What's my days of cover for my inventory? What's my accuracy of my demand forecast? That Ed was talking about this earlier. What's my accuracy of my demand forecast if I look a month out or 2 months out? And so it's interesting, you're trying to achieve the same thing, but you've got two completely different KPIs and they don't necessarily talk or even understand what the other one's doing. So I completely take your point for sure on that.
Any last words to this wonderful team? From this team to this team?
Aligned with the business.
Align with the business. It's, that is a saying that someone said to me, oh, that sounds like an old, tagline, but I think it is so imperative. So I agree with you 100%. Yep. Well, we are going to wrap up. To the audience, thank you so much for listening in, and certainly to this wonderful panel. Really appreciate all your insights and giving me this time today to have this conversation. And of course, to the Institute for giving us this forum to have this chat. So with that, I will say good night to you all, because where I happen to be, it is nighttime. You all have a lovely day in the United States, but I will see you guys soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on most Tuesdays of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.